Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest bonus episode of the Stephen King podcast. This is bonus episode number 7, and I am honored to have with me a New York Times and USA Today bestselling author, Steena. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. And you are based in Calgary, correct?
Yes, I am.
And you've written how many books now?
Oh, around 30 or so.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I was just getting a tip of the iceberg in your blurby here.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes. So you have a family.
I
You're
do.
3 children.
I have 3 teenage daughters,
Oh, my
19,
goodness.
18, and one who's turning 15 soon.
Okay, and how long have you been writing?
Well, I started officially in 2005, and
Okay.
then I wrote a story based on a challenge from my husband.
Ah,
I had 6 months to submit a story into a contest, and I'd never done it before. I submitted it. It won. It won a publishing contract, which was great. And then I spent the next 5 years trying to write more stories and realizing I knew nothing about writing. So I took
okay.
those 5 years to figure it out. And then 2010 is technically when I started really focusing on writing. I started
Okay.
part-time, and then 2011 was about full-time.
Wow. Okay, so you got a challenge from your husband to submit a story. I'm curious as to how that came about.
Well, I think this is typical, like anyone. I had a job and I didn't enjoy it. And
Right.
he was probably tired of listening to me complain about not enjoying a job. And he was working in a career that he loved. And he's like, why don't you start focusing on that? Do something that you want to do. So when he saw this opportunity for a writing contest, he forwarded it to me and he's like, so why don't you try it? I think you can do it. I know you can do it. You've always wanted to, so do it.
Wow.
And I'm not one who turns down a challenge.
Okay.
And so I did it while I was working.
Wow. So, and why was it a writing contest that he challenged you with? Were you noodling around a bit with writing, or?
No, actually, I was just a voracious reader.
Oh,
And
okay.
when I was a teenager, my goal had been to be a writer or a teacher. And I would submit things to newspapers or whatnot, and I'd win contests for poetry or whatever. I had won a nationwide writing contest, and I came from Ontario here to Alberta for like a week
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And he just knew it was something I'd always wanted to do, but I didn't believe in myself enough.
Right.
And he
Wow.
did.
So, so you write, this was your first piece that you wrote,
Yes.
and you won this contest. So you must have felt, wow, this is pretty easy.
No, I was like, what kind of contest did I enter that I would actually win? It
Okay.
was crazy.
Yeah. So, because I think for a lot of people starting out writing, your experience is unique in that you won something right off the back,
Mm-hmm.
off the top. So, did you? And you sort of mentioned it that you had to take some time off to learn how to write in a more consistent manner. I believe is what you were
Yes.
aiming at.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I had won this, and after some editing, I realized that I really didn't know anything about writing.
Right.
But I thought I could do it. I did it, so I can do
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
So I wrote some more, and then I started submitting to agents, and almost, well, for the ones who would respond to me, they said, the storyline was great, but I needed to work on my craft better, or I needed to learn my craft. And so it was probably after 5 or 6 of those within the first 2 years, I think, of submitting, I got it in my head that maybe I don't really know what I'm doing. So I spent time learning and taking courses and working with critique groups and whatnot.
Okay. So courses are like through schools or
No, just online.
online.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned that you were a voracious reader. Who
Yes.
were some of your favorite authors growing up?
Oh, well, I am really bad with author names. So I would read anything and everything. So I would read horror and thriller and sci-fi and fantasy. My husband and I were pastors for a while, so I would read a lot of Christian romance or Christian fiction.
Right.
I loved the old time romance, so like Elizabeth Mansfield or whatever. I would hide away all the sci-fi, fantasy, and horror so that no one would know I was reading it. Yeah, I would read anything and everything. And the thicker the book, the better, which is why I loved the fantasy, because they were always so thick.
Right, right. Okay, that's very interesting. So you were broadly read, and what types of stories were you writing then in the beginning?
Well, we were pastors when I first started writing, so it was a Christian romance. And then I started, in those 5 years, I would write horror and like a Christian thriller thing, which was really bad, but I tried it. And then I went to erotic romance, and I got some contracts with some small publishers, EPUBs, and I did that for a bit, and then started self-publishing just regular romance on my own. And then I went into women's fiction, and that's where I had my big breakout.
Oh, okay.
Was women's
Very
fiction.
good.
Yeah.
And you said you're self-published. Now, that was back in the, early?
That was like 2011.
Oh, okay. So the e-publishing was a thing at the time.
Yes.
I thought you might have been a bit earlier before that.
No.
So, no. Okay. So you've obviously must have learned a lot with the courses and the support group that you had to be able to move up the ladder so quickly. So I'm looking at your greatest hits accomplishments list here. You've been on the New York Times bestselling list, USA Today.
Yeah.
You've sold close to 2 million books. Wow,
Yeah.
That's very impressive. In the top 20 women authors to read in 2015.
Yep.
Your previous books that I'm looking at here, you have Saving Abby.
Yes.
Abby's Journey.
Yeah, those were my last two.
Two? Okay. And then I guess you wanted to get on my podcast because I understand that your next book is a psychological thriller.
Yes, the one that comes out April 1st. I wrote one beforehand. It was called The Memory Child.
Okay.
And it was a little twisted about postpartum psychosis.
Oh.
And then I went back to women's fiction, and I just realized that I love to read twisty books. And I love suspense and thrillers and horrors to a point of what I can stomach. But I decided to start challenging myself again and get back into what I really love writing.
Okay. So you mentioned that you had a background as a pastor for a while.
Yeah.
So does that restrict your boundaries of what you're willing to write, or do you find it actually something that you've turned into a strength, or?
It's a strength. So let me put it this way.
Okay.
I wrote my Christian romance, and I had people in the church say to me, you need to be careful what you write, and it has to always be clean. And you need to be like good, godly Christian woman. And I'm like, okay, thanks for the advice. So then I started writing erotic romance.
Okay. Just to be contrarian.
Yes. Don't tell me what I have to do or can't do. That's how I live my life.
Right. Okay. So what was I know you've repeated throughout the interview that you do like horror, and that what brought you about, or what was the genesis of this book as opposed to the last couple that you had written?
Oh, we've had some really hard times happen in our family, and with suicide tendencies and some attempts with one of my daughters. And in the past, I've written really deep emotional books. And I just couldn't do that. I needed a bit of a break from all the tears and the crying and ripping out my heart every time I write a story. And so when you go through stuff like that, there's a lot of darkness that comes out within you, and you have to figure out how to deal with it. And so this was how I did it. I just decided that it was time to embrace it and to let it be and let it come out the way it needed to come out. So it came out in my writing.
This was a cathartic experience for you then?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. So what's the premise of The Forgotten One?
It's all about those deep, deep, dark family secrets that have a way of twisting everything and destroying everything in its path. And that's exactly what happens in this book.
Okay. And who's the protagonist of your story?
So I have David Walker, who is dying on a hospital bed, and he has been estranged from his family because of a decision that he had made a long time ago, and his daughter no longer wants anything to do with him. So he's laying on that bed, completely racked with pain. He's dying of cancer, and it's throughout his whole body, and he couldn't be touched.
Right.
Everything would hurt. Yeah, I made him into someone that someone that you can like and hate at the same time. Okay. So then I have Al, who is his granddaughter, who always believed that he was dead. And he just wants to tell her stories. And of course, there's Al's mother, who doesn't want to hear anything from David and wants to pretend that he's still dead.
Right. Okay. So this will be a one shot, or is this the start of another series for you?
No, this is a standalone.
This is a standalone. Okay.
Yeah.
And is this being self-published or?
No, it's with Lake Union.
Okay. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
And are you going to be doing any sort of a book tour for this book, or is it just local stuff? Or
I'm definitely going to be doing some local things, and I'm working on seeing if we can do something across country.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how about your previous books, the Abby series? What are those all about?
So I have a tendency to write with my heart, and I always, when it comes to my women's fiction, I like to take those things that I fear the most as a parent or as a woman, and I like to bring them out and really, instead of letting them hide inside and scare me, I want to deal with it. So Saving Abby is all about a mother's decision whether she needs to save her own life or her unborn child's life. She can only save one.
Okay.
And it's all about that decision process and how it affects everyone around. So not just her, but her husband and her mother and how it affects everyone and those hard choices that we have to make.
Right.
When it comes to decisions like that.
All right, that sounds pretty heavy.
Yeah, I tend to deal with heavy subjects.
Okay, so because I just, when you mentioned romance, I just thought you were writing maybe a little more lighter material than that. But
No. My women's fiction, the romance, yes, it's all light. But the women's fiction deals with the harder subjects. I just tend to have a softer touch. So I deal with small town school shootings and child sexual abuse and children who are kidnapped. And postpartum psychosis.
Okay, wow. And that's a very interesting blend. I'm expecting a very severe horror novel from you down the line based on...
Yes. That is what I'm working towards.
Okay. So that will be interesting because, that's that's some heavy material. And what's the response to these types of stories? Like, do you make it are they an uplifting experience for the reader? Like, or does it stay pretty grim all the way through?
My whole goal is to tear their hearts out. I want them to be crying and bawling. I want them to feel like they were in that story and they were that character and they were having to make the same decisions or live through the same horrific events. That's my goal.
Right.
But I do it with a soft touch, so everyone still loves me afterwards.
That's good. So you don't get angry fans banging on your door saying, "How could you be so cruel?"
No, I often get people emailing me and saying, thank you for telling my story. When I did Stillwater Rising with the small town school shootings, I had people in communities where they've had that tragedy, and they would email me and say, thank you for being authentic and really focusing on what happens afterwards, like the aftermath and the healing everyone has to do. Saving Abby, I had a lady tell me that she had to make the same choice, either her life or her unborn child. And she appreciated how I didn't hide away from that, right? I didn't make it sound selfish or sacrificial either. And she just appreciated that I told her story, a story that she could never really tell. So that makes it worth it.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if he came up with it, but I know Stephen King has always said that there's at the heart of fiction is truth. And I think that's what you're writing about is the emotional truth of situations that a lot of us don't face. But as you've pointed out, some of your readers have faced. And if they have faced that, they want to be told a story that echoes what they went through and not just some sort of glamorized version of it, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I just like to start a little bit to your craft because as a fellow budding writer, I always like to pick other writers' brains and see how they do what they do. So are you a outliner or a pantser?
Well, when I started, I was a pantser, but I've had to become an outliner. So I am a very rough outliner. And I can't know too much about the story, otherwise I don't want to write it anymore.
Right. So you don't know, do you know the ending?
Usually I either know how it starts or I know how it ends.
Okay.
If I know the ending, then I can't know the whole story. I can't know how I'm going to get there.
Right.
And if I don't know the ending, then that's even better. For instance, The Forgotten Ones, I had no idea how it was going to end. Oh. And it was even the very last scene. It took me a couple of days to figure it out and I wanted to go one way and it just wouldn't do it.
Right.
So the ending even surprised me.
Wow. So that's fun, eh?
That was very fun. Yeah. Yeah. And I've had early readers tell me exactly how they felt about how it ended. And I
Uh-huh.
totally understand their feelings on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is.
Okay. So what's your typical, do you write full, I assume you write full time
I
now?
do,
Or,
yes. Yeah.
yes. And what's your work ethic, your work schedule?
So it all depends on the book. So the book that I'm writing right now, it's due in 2 weeks. And this one is a psychological suspense.
Mm-hmm.
It only likes to be written in the evenings.
Yeah.
I can't seem to get my head wrapped around it or ready to write anything during the day. So I
Okay.
spend my days working on marketing or branding. I help new authors with branding, creating their own
Okay.
brand and whatnot. So I do that. And my publicist has me really busy right now doing a lot of interviews and stuff. So that fills my days. And then the evenings, usually from like between 2 and 3 onward, is
Mm-hmm.
my prime writing time right now.
Oh, I'm feeling guilty right now.
Oh, don't worry. I think I have like 300 words left.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm good.
Okay, well, that's good. What's your word count for a day? Do you have a goal or you just
Yeah. So just in case my editor hears this, I do not want to
Uh-oh.
say.
Oh, okay.
But no matter what I work on, I always make sure I write 1,000 words a day at a minimum.
Okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And do you write 7 days a week?
I do. I try
Yeah.
lately. I've been trying to take at least one day off of weekend, and the other
Mm-hmm.
day I don't worry too much about hitting my word count. On
Right.
the other day, I just if I get it, I get it, and if I don't, I don't, and I'll just catch up the next day. So
Right.
I'm trying to have some balance in my
Right.
life. Yeah.
Okay. So then when you finish the book or the story, you put it in the drawer for a while and let it percolate, and then you come
No,
back to it. No?
no,
No
I
such luxury?
no such luxury. I am the type that I edit while I write. So
Oh, okay.
I will go back and work on previous scenes. I
Mm-hmm.
also like to do deep editing. I took some courses with Margie Lawson, and
Okay.
she is all about going deeper into your writing and making it as best as you can. So I love to print my book out, and I go crazy on it with the highlighters and the red pen and really deep edit the sucker out of it.
Okay, that's very cool. I know a lot of writers. You hear different things, but I do think that's really where the story really comes alive is
I
in the
agree.
editing.
I agree.
Yeah. So, what kind of tools do you use? Are you on a Mac? Or you use Scrivener?
I sure do.
Or,
I can't write any other way. I've tried.
okay.
It just doesn't work.
All right. So Scrivener.
Yes.
Scrivener. And do you use any sort of editing software? Like I know there's I actually have the software. That's pretty bad that I don't know what it is. What's it called? Pro Writing Aid.
No,
You
I've
ever
never
heard of
heard of
that?
that.
Heard that one? Okay. It's a pretty extensive set of tools for grammar and sticky words, sentences, and things of that nature. You can produce all different reports. So I find that pretty useful.
So Pro Writing Aid. Okay.
Yeah. Do you dictate at all? Like, do you do dragging, naturally speaking? Or?
No, I don't. I
Okay.
have tried that as well. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I'll sit there with my laptop open with Scrivener open, and you can dictate into Scrivener, which is
Right.
fabulous. So I'll do that sometimes. But
Right.
I find if my mouth is shut, then my brain seems to work better, and it just comes out of
Okay.
my fingers. But once my mouth opens, it's like it's all gone.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you ever try writing by longhand at all, or
No, but I
no?
have started plotting by longhand. So
Okay.
I have a little notebook for each book I write,
Mm-hmm.
or one big notebook with different sections in it. And I will go through and write out my ideas and who my characters are. And I'll start plotting that way. And then I'll take that and I'll move it into Scrivener. That's just
Right.
something I've started this past year or so.
Okay, interesting. And so once you get through the editing stage, have you sent it out for beta readers already, or is that you do the editing first and then you send it out for beta
Yeah, I
readers?
do the editing first and then I'll do the beta readers.
Okay. And does that process usually go the way you expect it to, or not so much?
It depends on the beta reader.
Okay.
And it depends on our relationship. So some are really great and I only have a couple that I send it to.
Mm-hmm.
One is really uplifting and And she's like, this was great, but I wonder if something like this would just make it stand out even more. And then I have another beta reader we can just be very frank with each other. So she's like, Steena, that was like, I don't know what you were thinking, but that's just a pile of shit there. That doesn't work at all. So just delete the whole thing and then move on. Huh. I'm not sure yet which one I like better.
Yeah. I think if they just give you nothing but praise, that's nice, but it doesn't really help you with the story.
No, and you can't grow as a writer either, right?
Exactly. So then you send it off to your editor.
Yes.
And how does that usually go?
So I have recently switched editors. I've had probably about 4, I think, that I've really enjoyed working with. Usually I will send them something that is really strong, usually. And they'll go through it and they'll give me their ideas and how to make it stronger, or the plot holes. Like there's little areas that I kind of dropped and I knew I had dropped them, but I needed their help and how to fix them. And so we'll talk and we'll go through it and we'll decide what works and what doesn't work. And then I'll spend some time fixing it and I'll send it back to her. And then, she'll come back with any other little changes or things I'd forgotten or it's great. Well, let's go on with it.
All right.
But usually it's that first editing letter that comes back usually takes me at least 2 days to open because I am so worried that she wouldn't like it. Right. And I have to build myself up for it. And I remember for the first couple books, when I would get that letter back, I'd usually cry while reading it. And I'd be like, oh my God, she didn't like it. It was horrible. I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have done that. And then I'll look it over again a couple days later and, oh, okay, well, maybe it's not that bad.
All right.
So I just give myself a little bit of time now before I open it and a little bit of alcohol along with it.
Okay. And I'm hoping that this process, do you feel at the end of it that the book is better than when you first sent it to them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think I would ever be able to not work with an editor again.
Okay.
I've learned so much from the process.
That's very cool. And I'm curious now that because you say you are with a publisher, in today's market, it seems that a lot of writers are moving to self-publishing. Is that something that you are happy not to be pursuing right now, or are you pursuing it in conjunction?
No, I still do.
You still do, right?
Yeah, I do both.
Okay, so you maintain the digital rights to your works then? Or?
So what happens is there are some things that I will self-publish on my own, and some things I'll give to my publisher. And there's been some stories I've given to my publisher, and then readers have wanted to know more about a certain character or know more about a story, and it's not worth a novel, so I'll do novellas or whatnot, and I'll publish those on my own.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, that seems to be a nice little sideline for a lot of writers nowadays to be able to publish those sort of ancillary stories. So that's very good.
Yeah, I have a new series that I want to start publishing in the summer, and it's going to be all on my own.
Okay, very good.
Once again. Yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah, all right. So I think I've run the gamut of my questions. Is there anything that you wanted to mention or talk about that I haven't asked you about? It could be about your work or charity.
I have 2 books that I've worked with charities for, which has been fabulous. And the first one is the Finding Emma series. That was my breakout novel.
Okay.
And I've worked with the Missing Children Society of Canada.
Okay.
Because the subject was about a mother trying to find her kidnapped daughter. So I always, every year, donate proceeds from my book sales to that charity. And then same with Stillwater Rising. I donate proceeds to a community where there's been a school shooting or an organization that goes into to help with the school shootings. Okay. It's something that I love to do. I want to be able to give back to my readers. And I want to be able to, this is my way of saying thank you to readers for supporting me. So if I can support others, then I'm really happy.
Right. Is the Stillwater series, is that a complete series, or would you still consider adding, because I'm just thinking about like what's going on in the States now with the Parkland shooting and all these students rising up and I think the story is done within me. The story that I wanted to tell. My goal was to talk about the aftermath and how communities can come together and heal. But with the new rising up that the students are doing, there's organizations that they're going to start creating or whatnot, then I'll definitely be supporting that with those sales. Okay, very good. And I also noticed on your website, I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, that you have this 5-day branding course.
Yeah, so my website is steenaholmes.com. And I love to support authors. I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have the support of other authors when I was growing, and still where I am today. I still need that support. And one thing I've learned throughout the years is how important branding is as an author. To me, branding is a promise that you make to your readers. And I know that there's times, especially for new writers, the idea and the concept of branding and how to brand and how you get started can be really overwhelming. And we make a lot of mistakes. And I know I did. So I want to help authors not to make those mistakes and to get rid of that fear that they have on how difficult branding can be. So I've created a 5-day email course. So it's just 5 emails that come to you and helps you with different aspects of what branding can be and how you can get started. So if you follow through those 5 days, I give you homework on each day. And by the end of it, you should have an idea of how you can get started. And then I offer courses, simple ones it's a video course on branding, how to use Instagram as an author, or why you should be blogging as an author.
Right.
And then I do one-on-one coaching as well. So for those authors who have no idea how to get started, I'll work with them one-on-one for a month, and we'll get it started together.
Right.
So it's something I'm really excited about, because the community that we have as authors is so small and so tight. And if we can continue to support each other, it's just going to continue to be stronger, and more people are going to find success, and they'll be able to use the passion that they have to write, and they're going to be able to do it more.
Right. Very good. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on the podcast, and I wish you all the best with the launch of your book, which is coming out April 1st.
Yeah.
Okay, that's excellent. And you're working on another book at the same time, right?
I am. It's due in 2 weeks.
Ooh, 2 weeks.
So
wow.
It's due the day my book launches.
Wow. And then you get to repeat the cycle, right?
I do, yes.
Okay. Well, it was very nice talking to you, Steena. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we'll be looking for you on the bookshelves.
Sure.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank
Awesome.
you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.